You're in the right place. This is the Eatfluencer Podcast, and I'm your host, Dr. Maggie Landes. Together, we are going to unpack everything about eating and discover the what, when, and how that will let you lead your best life. This is not your doctor's conversation about nutrition. Today is when you can start to love eating again. Let food be food and you be you. Get ready to get eatfluenced. Welcome back to the Eatfluencer Podcast. This is Maggie Landes. I am your host here, and you are listening to episode 34, The Connection of Trauma and Diet Culture. And I've got a guest today you are going to love. You know that I do only about a third or so, a quarter of my episodes with guests, and so I'm pretty selective about the content I bring and the people I interview. But I met this week's guest on Clubhouse. We don't need to recount my whole Clubhouse addiction, but I continue to meet great people and feel like I'm going to keep showing up because I meet people like Liz. So we have today on the episode Liz Childs, who is a certified trauma therapist with almost 20 years of experience in that field. And now she is a mind-body coach and founder of the Curvy Collective, which is a body-positive anti-diet group for women. She's also the founder and CEO of her private coaching business, Elizabeth Childs Coaching. And she's here today so that we can start unpacking and unraveling the relationship between trauma and diet culture. And that may sound like sort of a serious topic, which it is a serious topic. And it's really so big that we can't adequately cover it in one episode. But the two aspects of trauma and diet culture that Liz and I chat about in this episode you're about to hear is, first off, the response that many people who have endured personal trauma have in their relationship with food and how they use their relationship with food and their eating to avoid the emotional injury of their trauma experience. And that was Liz's personal story, and she recounts some aspects of that during the conversation. The other side of the coin is that this diet culture messaging that you've heard me talk about many, many times, this pervasive narrative to control our size, shrink our bodies in order to be acceptable, that is a source of trauma for all of us, and specifically for people in large, sort of non-quote normative, culturally normative shapes. So this is a really interesting conversation. I will give you the warning. There is a few conversations where Liz mentions actual weight because she does recount her personal experience. And so just be aware that that is in the conversation. But absolutely, this is a important piece to understand when you're really understanding how damaging diet culture is and continues to be for all of us. So without any more delay, I'm going to get you into our episode today with Liz Childs. All right, and here we are today. Liz Childs is on the Eatfluencer Podcast. Hi, Liz. Thank you for joining me.
Hi, how are you?
Oh, I'm great. And I'm so glad to have this conversation today. You have a really unique background that I have yet to highlight somebody with your, well, let's just be honest. Is there anybody like you? No.
No.
No, but I'm so glad you're here because particularly with your background in trauma, that is a major component of healing our relationship with our food, nutrition, body, everything. So could we start by, you could tell us how you got to this place where you have intersected the two, because it's unique. It's different.
It's very different. I've looked around and I have not seen anyone who has the experience, the credentials, and the messaging that I do. So it's a really interesting question of how did I get to this place? How did I actually turn my pain into my passion and purpose? So like I used to be 450 pounds. And I got that way because when I was 10 years old, my father died. And he died of a heart attack. And he actually died on the table as a result of, trying to get a quadruple bypass surgery.
Mm.
So I was 10 years old. He was 42, which is exceedingly young.
Yes.
And so I lost my protector. I lost my hero. And so I was never taught, as most people are not, how to really sit with and how to deal with those emotions. So what happened is that I turned to the one thing that I felt like could soothe and could make me feel better, and was food. So, but as I began to eat to soothe those feelings, what happened is my body grew. It became into a traumatic response. I was in survival because
Mm.
your mind is always going to tell you, and it's all about survival, that I can't feel this way, I can't stand it, and if I don't know how to move through it and to mitigate that, I need to do something to distract, numb, or take it away.
Right,
So
because we're really bad at processing negative emotions, all of us, really bad. And
right.
so we just defer that process by whatever it is for you that was eating.
Absolutely. So for me, that was food. And for some people it can be gambling, sex, it can be drugs, it can be alcohol, it can be all these different things. Like our culture is really, really great at distraction and teaching us to not feel things rather than how to emotionally regulate. And that is emotional intelligence and learning how to actually change your mindset. So, and it's like, so what happened is I turned to food. Food is socially acceptable. Like we use it in everything. We use it for celebration, for mourning, for like when we're bored. So, and we're not taught how to navigate those emotional states. So as I began to eat, and what happened is my body began to grow. And what I didn't understand at the time was that the more that I ate, the more that my body could not process it because it was already in a traumatic response. So, and then with diet culture, I was always taught, like most people, and like I was as a kid and as a teenager, I got bullied. I got bullied, and it was all about you have to look a certain way. And it's like, so if I wasn't look a certain way, it's like, it was rejection, it was abandonment, it was all those things, which further heightened the idea that being fat was bad.
Mm-hmm.
Only the only thing that ever made me feel better was the food. Because what a lot of people don't understand is like a lot, especially with carbohydrates temporarily boost serotonin. And
Mm-hmm.
and all the serotonin is actually metabolized through the gut. So as I got older and I actually grew to being 450 pounds, I had high blood pressure, high cholesterol, sleep apnea, and diabetes. And so what happened is I did what I thought was the only thing that I could do to survive. I had gastric bypass surgery. And, and during that time, I lost so much weight, and it fixed my stomach, but it did not fix my head. The emotional currency to food was still there. I still didn't learn how to mitigate and like have my feelings. I didn't learn how to trust my body. And I that didn't realize that the brain was driving the reflection of what was showing up in my body. So then when I went through the trauma of divorce, when I could no longer relate to my husband with food, going out, going to dinner, those things, social activity, and I didn't look a certain way, when I went through the trauma of divorce, I gained back over 100 pounds. And that really highlighted the fact that it's not about what you eat, it's what's eating you.
Ooh,
So
that's good. Say that one more time. Okay. I want to make sure everybody heard that clearly. Because that's like the headline of this episode, right?
exactly, it's not about what you're eating, it's about what's eating you. If you're not learning how to regulate your emotions, how do I sit with this feeling? What am I telling myself about it? And how do I get out of a traumatic response? Because your body doesn't understand the difference between a perceived fear and anxiety and an actual fear. So your body is going to go into releasing adrenaline, cortisol, and it's going to make that energy readily available to fight or run,
Mm-hmm.
right? So in those traumatic responses, what happens is we go, I can't stand it. So we don't learn how to move through it. And a lot of times we actually freeze. And then I can't stand this feeling.
Yeah,
And
that's
so
the other F, right? Everybody knows the fight or flight, but the F is there's sort of a paralysis too.
yeah, there's actually four responses to trauma: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn.
Oh,
So
okay.
fawn is actually going to be where we like want to please the person or in the situation to make it better so that we can survive. So we
Okay, gotcha.
fawn. It's people pleasing at its finest.
Yes, that doesn't get as much airtime as the fight or flight, to be
No, it
honest.
doesn't, because fight or flight is actually much more reactionary. What people don't understand is that the freezing is actually much more conducive to creating post-traumatic stress disorder. And then what happens is when we go to eat to feel better and to temporarily boost that serotonin, because we don't know how to deal with the emotion and we don't know how to let it go and release it, what happens is like that adrenaline cortisol is what creates the visceral fat around the organs, because
Right.
because the food can't be processed, it can't be burned off. And then most of the time that anxiety and that perceived fear, which is our daily stressors that all of us are coming into contact with, and when we eat, it's just simply getting stored as fat. And it's like, it doesn't necessarily mean that fat is bad. It's more of like, well, because then at that point your body doesn't have a chance to actually use it as nourishment. We're simply stuffing our feelings. And then when your body, which is just simply trying to support you and is being programmed and doing what it's told by the brain because it's in a traumatic response, it's just simply going to store it. But then what happens with diet culture is we're trained to hate the appearance and the very look of how the body is, further divorcing our mind from our body of going, I don't want to be here. I can't look like this. I can't be loved.
That's just another nidus of trauma, basically. I mean, it just
Exactly.
keeps
Mhm.
compounding it because it's that
Mhm.
is we're going to be confronted with that until you and I and everybody else can change that narrative. So
Absolutely. So basically, you're going to keep recreating the circumstances in which you were first hurt until you learn what it has to teach you. Basically, you will bleed on people that never cut you.
So how did you get into this? I know you do this trauma therapy. I mean, you did that professionally. So where did that fit in with your own personal story of, your father and your divorce and your weight gain and loss and gain and
Mhm.
all that sort of stuff? In the meantime, you're treating trauma people and really taking a deep dive professionally on what it means to process negative emotion. That's
Absolutely. Yeah.
that's your zone of genius, really.
It, thank you. Yes, it is my zone of genius, because what I realized is that in actually every single interaction with the world, in relationships, in business, when I would go into a trauma response in order to be able to soothe my emotions and in order for my ego to survive and be comfortable, I was making everything about my weight when it actually had nothing to do with it. So
Hmm.
what I found is the more that I actually had my mind body connection, the more that I could actually own my feelings and learn how to move through them and love myself. The natural outcome was, in order to take care of that which I love the most, I naturally made healthier choices and decisions, which I could sit down and eat a meal, whatever it was, give myself permission, and then really analyze, does this feel good to me? Is this taking care of the vessel that I love? Is this supporting me? And not assigning an emotional value to, this is good, this is bad, this will make me fat, this is what are other people thinking when I sit down and order? Is my doctor going to yell at me? Or can I fit into my jeans? Oh, well, I've got to go to the gym and I've got to work that off. I got to earn those calories, got to do another mile today.
Yeah.
And actually just going, it doesn't matter how it looks. This is my vessel. And when something doesn't feel good, it's not about a self-sabotaging pattern. So when I got more into touch with that and loving myself, now I have the ability and the power to change how it looks. And not for other people, for me. So it supports me in all the other things that I want to do. So when it came to that, like I realized that when like the response, when like most people have a traumatic, unresolved situation, event, life happens, what happens, I've noticed that I started to notice that there was more blame in the body, that people were like, for example, when suicidality with PTSD, it's very common to have cutting or burning. And so that's self-harm. And it's like, so they were actually blaming and placing blame on the body and divorcing what it is that was could really support them. And here's what we found out with all the research is that in like regular therapy, that the brain, actually the higher neocortex, your higher consciousness, your understanding in a traumatic instance shuts down. It cannot be, you cannot heal trauma just by talking about it.
It's not
Just
an
by sitting,
intellectual exercise. Yeah.
nope. And that's like, and finally, thank God, we're finally figuring that out, because like I know all of the different treatment modalities: dialectical behavioral therapy, cognitive behavioral therapy, rational emotive behavioral therapy, Gestalt therapy, like integration parts, Jungian, and psychoanalytical, all of it. And it's like, but what we found to be the most effective, especially in terms of where we're not going in and sabotaging a diet or an exercise regimen, is when we can actually express and psychosomatically express the feelings in the body. We've become so divorced from feelings and assigning good, bad, right, wrong, that most of the time we simply go, I don't want to be here.
Yeah.
I don't want to be here. And then what the story is that we make up and tell ourselves about is like, so we have an emotional event. I feel sad. Something happened. I feel sad. We don't know how to deal with it. We don't move through it. What happens is we make up a story about it. I can't stand it. So then what do? That is exactly what gets us into making that into depression. And then we assign something to that. I'm not worth the while. I can't, whatever it is, because there's a belief behind it. And that's when like it robs us of our energy, it robs us of our present, and then we get stuck in that. And that's a traumatic pattern. So we project, we put all of our power outside of ourselves. We'll put it onto food, we'll put it onto anything. So when we can actually express and we can actually feel that in the body, it becomes our magic, it becomes our power.
Right. Well, the whole idea in my mind of undoing diet culture is really retrieving that power back so that we
Yes.
are our own authority and not
Mhm.
we're not subscribing to this external set of metrics or validation, whatever you want to say. That's
Exactly.
a key piece. So where's the entry point for that? Okay. So like, let's say somebody's listening to you describe this and they're like, I hear that. I see that. I'm feeling what she's saying. What, but I'm so deep. We are so deep in this diet culture.
Mhm.
It's hard to even untangle ourselves sometimes.
Oh, yes. It's
So
really hard. I mean, because you've been told that you have to look a certain way in order to be loved. But like, isn't that like, because ultimately that's what everyone wants. We all want to be seen, heard, loved, and understood. And so it's like we're at that point, we're not eating to be present, to be available, to live the life, to have a purpose. We're eating just simply because it feels good. And then with the body's response, that's where the fat just simply just like adds on because the body can't process it.
right. And we're not, and just to be clear with everybody listening, we're not anti-fat on the body. Fat is just a
Nope.
thing on the body. We don't care
Mhm.
about that one bit. What we're saying is we're not even allowing our bodies to function optimally because we're being derailed by this trauma response, which is both psychological
Exactly.
and physiological.
Mhm.
Is that
Exactly.
accurate?
It absolutely is. It's psychological and physiological. That's the mind body connection. So it's because trauma cannot be resolved and it cannot be moved through just cognitively, just in the mind. And this is where the body comes into play. We cannot love something. Love is like the only way to actually be able to reform that mind body connection, because like you can't criticize, shame, exercise, starve, restrict, something into molding it into what you want. It's like, it doesn't work that way. I mean, it's like shame has the lowest vibration of any energy.
Right.
And
So you're
it's
not
like,
going to create a positive response with a bunch of negative energy.
no, I mean, like, so think about it, like, cancer survives on fear and anger. It's like, that's what it eats on. Now, biologically, it eats on sugar. But what are we really doing when we eat a lot of sugar? Because like your body is actually, the body, when it's actually in a natural state of equilibrium, doesn't actually crave anything. So that's part of the reason why we eat sugar to feel better. It temporarily boosts the serotonin, it numbs us, but is actually more conducive to inflammation in the body, and then like causes our neurons and like our body to be, like our mind to be inflamed. We don't feel good, and then we're told we don't look good, and then so the next thing we know, we're off to the races. The only thing that people really know is they sit there and go, but wait, I don't look like that person in the ad. I don't look like that spandex goddess in the gym. I don't, oh, well, they chose somebody else over me because I'm not as attractive, because I'm told that I can't look like this and still be lovable.
Right. And
So it's
every
like, yeah,
layer of negative self-talk that goes into that, it just is like keeping you stuck like a weight. And you can't see what I'm doing on the podcast, but
absolutely.
I'm like pushing my hand out. It's like you're kind of, you're just stuck. You're not going to be able to escape that loop, right?
Exactly. So, like, in learning how to eat intuitively, what feels good to you? And like, you can't actually figure out what feels good to you and what your body needs if you don't know how to listen to it, if you're hating it. So, I mean, like, and believe me, I have defeated practically every diet on the planet. And I have like gone to the gym, and I'm like, because I'm a trained boxer. I am an ice hockey player. I have run miles. I go hiking, kayaking, biking, all the different things. I've literally been in the gym and like ground my joints to dust. And then like I can restrict as much as I want to, and like it'll still stick. It will still stick because the body just simply knows that I am in deprivation and that I'm hating it, I'm criticizing it, I don't like it. And then that is exactly what creates this trauma response, because your brain's just going to go, well, wait a minute, this is not comfortable. This isn't comfortable. And then being in that place of self-shame, self-blame, sadness, judgment is exactly what programs the body to release the cortisol and the adrenaline that keeps fat on the body, so that even no matter what you eat or no matter what you do to exercise, it will stay.
Right. So that's an interesting point, because I think that the misinformation that diet culture gives us is that this is all an intellectual exercise, and if you count calories and you close the rings on your Apple Watch and the treadmill counter goes up and all this sort of stuff, that it's like one big math problem and we can
Yep.
use our uh, brain to fix it. But
Oh yeah. Oh
that's
yeah.
not at
Like,
all,
and
that's not the
that's
problem. We're not in
exactly,
this
that's not
situation
the
because
problem.
we don't have information. I mean, we don't have an information problem.
Exactly. Because here's the thing. I mean, here's like, and like, this is what I came to the conclusion after, like, I went on my first diet when I was 8 years old,
Mm-hmm.
because I was told that I had to look a certain way. And like, I mean, I'm sure that some of your listeners would have the experience of having a person in their life, and this is, I hate to say this, it's more among women than it is men, although eating disorders and things are rising among men, is that like, oh, I'm so, I can't eat that, I'm so fat. Or, oh, when did I get so fat? Oh, I'm gonna have to go on that diet, I'm gonna have to stick to this. And it's like, so we're taught from a very young age that I can't feel it, or I can't have that. And then there's an emotional response to it. It's like looking at that person, for example, my mother, I adore my mother, and my mother doesn't even have a weight problem. Of course, now she's much older, but I can very clearly remember her saying, oh, when did I get so fat? Looking at a mirror in
When
herself.
you're a child and in the home, she's saying that. Yeah.
Right. And it's like, but here's the person who I'm fashioning myself after. I'm looking at them and I'm mirroring their behaviors, their beliefs. And this is the most beautiful person in the world to me, someone that I love. And they're putting themselves down because they don't look like an image from a magazine or a movie or a show. And it's like, that is so incredibly devastating to the human psyche.
Yeah.
Or like, and I've even heard other things of like when you're with your friends and like somebody goes, "Ugh, she's too fat to wear that." What you learn from that limiting belief is another type of trauma of going, ooh, but what are they saying about me? And then in the mind, judgment and rejection lights up the exact same receptors in the brain as physical pain. So your body is going to go, I can't feel hurt. And I can't stand this feeling of this anxiety, this tension. How do I mitigate this? That's when an addiction is born. I need something else to not, because I don't know, I've never been taught how to deal with this emotion. So that in like that programs you to all of a sudden go, but I don't look like that. But I don't always act like that. And I don't know how to feel that. And so that
And we're
is the
looking
type
for
of
the
trauma.
easiest way out. I mean,
Of course.
we want the
Right, because
closest exit.
the path of least resistance, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, so what's cheap? What's easy? What's readily accessible? What do we usually associate with love? Food is very common. And it's like not only that, but it's like it's common all over the world. And it's like, so and it's socially acceptable. And then to go, oh, well, now we've added all these things into food, we've got all these things into our diet. And then it's like, and then we glorify a slender body, and we never actually stop to bother to ask, how do you feel? How do you feel? And then many times, what most of us have actually disowned our feelings. I mean, there's a lot of toxic culture. I can't feel that way. I'm not supposed to be angry. I'm not supposed to feel sad, or I don't want to be a Debbie Downer. And it's that divorce of those feelings is actually what causes the whole problem to begin with. And so, and then like, but if I restrict enough, or if I punish my body enough, or if I just exercise enough, it's not about like a whole, oh, well, here's how many, it's like, it's not a lack of knowledge. We know how many calories or like in a gram of like in food.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean,
That's
like, to count your macros and all of that crap, or like, I need to run so many miles and I need to do so many reps. It's like, well, great, but how does that support you in your life? How does it support you in your relationships? Because life is really more about connection. And guess what? All of it begins and ends with you. Your body is simply the vessel for you to be here. So
right.
when you
And you
disrespect
got
it, and
one.
you
Like I always say,
right, you've
you got
got
one.
one.
So you can fight
Like
it or not.
and everything that we do to our bodies is cumulative. And then we want to beat ourselves up for having stretch marks, for having rolls, for having, it's like, no, this is normal. And then, it's like in aging, like we get to go, okay, we're aging, well, it's better than the alternative, right? But it's like,
Yeah.
right? I mean, so like, and in like aging is not bad. Wrinkles are not bad. Stretch marks are not bad. It's like, especially for like my moms out there that have actually literally pushed like a human watermelon through a garden hose and then expecting and wanting the body to go back to what it was. It's like, no, that demands respect. And it's like, it actually takes so much energy and so much effort. And then it's like, you're responsible for this tiny little human being. And then we're going, well, guess what? I'm supposed to bounce right back. How is that loving?
Right.
How is that even rational? And then so we beat ourselves up for not like getting back to this. Oh, I got to lose the baby weight. That's not
Lose the
fair.
pandemic weight. That's what's going on
Oh,
now is everybody
yeah.
in
And it's
the
like, and I'm like,
quarantine,
right. And that's like, well, we all need social distancing from the fridge. And it's like, well, gee, wow. It's like, but in the isolation, in the disconnection is the pain. So where do we get to look for a solution? Where do we actually get to feel and respond and reconnect and love ourselves through something that everyone is having a hard time to go through? And it's like, but eating over it or beating myself up for wanting to eat over it or not getting all the exercise and not doing all the things, it's like, I would honestly argue that it has nothing to do with what you're eating. It has more to do with how
with
you are assigning something, an emotional relationship to the food.
right.
What does the food really mean to you? And then how are you treating your body in response?
Right. But diet culture has this real magic, sneaky way of assigning the blame to us because that's the only
Oh,
way that they will get
sure.
us to pull out our Visa card,
Exactly. That's the only way it's going to pay. And then
Yeah.
it's like, it's all like the solution. It's like, there's a reason why 90, like that's truly it. It's like, there's a reason why 98% of diets fail long term. And I'm like, I am a diet culture dropout. And guess what? It's like, I've been larger, I've been smaller, I've never been happier and more abundant. And I've never actually like just simply taking food on its nutritional value as something that gets to nourish my body to afford me in what I really want to do. And I
Right.
get to have joy and ease and flow in my life. And I don't sit there and like, if I want to eat something, I don't beat myself up for it because that's
Yeah.
going to put you in a trauma response. And I don't sit there and go, oh, ooh, now I'm, shaming myself for it. And it's like, no, it's food.
Right.
It's not love. It's like, that's why I always tell people put the fork down, honey. It's not what you're really looking for. And so, and it's like, and do I assign a value to my jean size? No, it is what it is. I'm like, it's clothing. I'm actually grateful that I can afford it
Hmm.
and that I can wear it. And it's like, and then it's like, I'm not going to keep things around that if I can't fit into it, just get rid of it. And it's like,
Right.
that's if I gain weight or if I lose weight. It's like, so I am not my body. My body is the vessel for the life and the love that I want to have and that I get to give. And that's really where we get to move forward towards like, so like, when a diet can be easily defeated because we're actually going, but I want that. Like when we have a hard day, oh, I've had a hard day. Screw it. I'm going to eat this. Or when we like, when we go to the gym, it's like, oh, I've got to do this. And we're like, we're punishing rather than celebrating the movement. And then like, so, and then when stressors happen, how do I talk to myself around that? And then like, rather than treating it and medicating it with food. And it's like, and we all have a natural set point weight, good, bad, right, wrong. It doesn't matter. It's like, but it's your body. It's the only one you've got. Everything is cumulative. Learning how to take care of it so that it can actually afford you to be here. That's the gift. And it doesn't matter what the packaging is. And so like, so now when I look more at my health, my mental health gets to come first. And then as a natural result, I make healthier choices because I love the vessel that I'm in. And then losing weight is just a natural byproduct. So I don't focus on how does it look. And that's why I look younger. Like I can actually show like, for your listeners, there's actually pictures of me at 450 pounds and I looked much older and I looked sad and depressed. My energy sucked. And now compared to where I am, I'm like my perfect size. No, but I radiate and I have confidence and I have love and I get to show up and be in my life with the people that I love. And that doesn't include a size.
Right. And the more that we continue that narrative in our head, that is a stress. I mean, that is a source of stress. So you're not going to be
Sure
able
is.
to undo the stress of hating your body with more stress. Like
Exactly.
the white knuckling the diet and all that sort of business. It's just
Yep.
there's this point of diminishing returns in my opinion. And then this is real, like, neurobiology. This is not just a feel good kind of exercise. This is
Mhm.
there's actually a point where the stress response in your body to doing all those things undoes any maybe theoretical advantage of, eating
Exactly.
this food or working out that much or whatever.
Exactly. And it's like, everything begins and ends with you. So mindset is everything. Your body is simply responding to your emotional programming. That's it.
Yes.
So it's like, so when we go through trauma and it remains unresolved, your body never forgets. So if it's not released, if it's not expressed, which we covered before, it cannot be done through just words and talking about it with just talk therapy. When we actually have that connection with our body and we can move through that, then it can be resolved. You're not holding on to it because the issues are in the tissues. So it's really starts to become, what am I really holding on to? What's this emotional value that I'm assigning to the food and to how I look and how I'm showing up and being present in my life will actually begin to reflect how you talk to yourself. And is that resolved? And then reestablishing the mind body connection. So then your body can actually go to Oh, okay, good. I can back down the amygdala. Now I can engage my parasympathetic system and I can actually learn how to be calm. I can learn how to biohack. I can optimize and I can be healthy, which allows and affords me to be here and be in love with who I am. And it doesn't matter what the vessel looks like.
Well, I love that message. And that is, I think, a really great place to land. Obviously, there's so much more to this conversation. So, where can my listeners find you? If they want to follow up on this, they have questions, they want to hear more Liz wisdom, where would they go to find you?
Oh, my clients actually call them Lizisms.
Lizisms. Hey, that's how you know you've like made it in the world when your name becomes like a proper noun.
Oh, absolutely. And and like I've got like three different books that I'm working on right now, don't ask. And but like one of them is called The Shape of Love. Love does not have a shape. It does not have a size. It does not have a number on a scale. And so but yes, so where to find me? You can find me at lizchildscoaching.com. You can get a free meditation and you can actually sign up for like a free introductory session with me, consultation, see how I can help you. If not, I simply want to provide the value and help people. And then you can also, I'm on Instagram all the time, just lizchilds_coaching. And then you can also look me up on Facebook. And I'm also on Clubhouse a lot, which is how I met
Clubhouse.
you.
That's where I met Liz. In full disclosure, this is another one of my Clubhouse wins.
Yes, and on Clubhouse, I am the Curvy Coach, founder of the Curvy Collective.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing all that. And I know this is going to be something that everybody is like, yep, yep, I hear that. And hopefully they've sort of had that land in a place where they can do something. And even just an awareness, the first step is even just being, I think, aware how problematic is to continue that,
Absolutely.
to get stuck in that trauma cycle.
Right, right.
That
Because
there's
it's like
people that can.
yeah, because like everybody always thinks so like, well, if I have the diet and I do the thing, then I can be happy. It's backward. Be happy, make the healthier choices, and then have the result of the body that you love,
Right.
regardless of what it looks like. So it's not have, do, be, it's be, do, be happy.
That must be one of your Lizisms. That'll go in the Lizism dictionary.
Oh yes, and it's like, and that's why I was telling people like, it's time to change your mind about your body.
Yes, yes, that is what I am preaching to. So thank you so much for joining me today. I'm glad you were able to come and make the time to help everybody out.
And thank you.
Wasn't that really something unique to hear? I seriously have not met anybody with that combination of both the understanding of the mind body connection, the experience of trauma, how that relates to our physiology, and how the big picture of self love and self respect really is where it all lands. Liz has just got a great wealth of information. And I knew when she started talking nerdy about neurotransmitters and the amygdala, I was going to love her. So I hope you enjoyed that interview as well. I have all in the show notes where you can find her on social media and on her website if you're interested in finding more about Liz's offerings. For my audience here, I want to thank you again for coming back week after week to the Eatfluencer podcast. If you are so kind on your podcast platform to take 3 seconds and tap the rating stars or leave a very brief review, I would appreciate it greatly. It helps this message get out into the ears of many and really does help where the ranking and ratings go so that when people search podcasts, this comes up higher in their search. And the reason that's meaningful is because I feel like we can disrupt this diet culture narrative if enough people hear this message. We all have a sphere of influence, and to get this new conversation really landing in more ears, in front of more eyes, in the brains of people, I think we can change this and really have a different social landscape for women in all sizes. So thank you for joining me again on this episode, and continue to live the anti-diet way as best you can. And I'll be back next week. Until then, thank you so much for being here today. If you love what you've learned, follow me on social media at Maggie Landes MD, and you'll never miss a thing. You can also check out my website at maggielandesmd.com and sign up to be part of our community of eaters. Thanks again for stopping by. We'll talk again soon.